Welcome back to the third day of Proof of People. It's an honour to introduce activist, photographer, and all-round positive voice in the NFT space, Misan Harriman.
Hey. Hi. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and see everyone here. I thought, because almost everyone in this room doesn't need any explanation on what smart contract technology is and why the NFT or irrevocable proof of provenance can and will change the world, I thought I'll start by telling you a little bit about me and my little story that became a big story. And this quote by one of the great photographers is something I try and live by. You know, the eye should learn to listen before it looks. And I think in this age of knee-jerk reactions to things and how divisive social media can be, this helps me steady my sails as I get on with the day. So, this is a pretty personal image of mine that not many people have seen. I was born in Nigeria, and I don't know how old I was there, maybe 4.5. And I'm bloody terrified in that image. And I'm sharing this with you because I've always been the boy that was a little bit scared of the world. You know, the world felt too big for me. And I've really only been able to find a safe harbor and solace in the sweet territory of art and culture. Perversely, as a little boy, school was a safer place than home for me. And I never felt more alive than when listening to music, looking at art, watching Doc and Marty McFly go on their first big adventure. All of those things were as real as anything in the traditional analog realm. And then I discovered video games. And for me, that was my first sort of entry into what we are now calling a meta experience. But I wanted to get back to photography. I only picked up a camera on my 40th birthday. My wife bought me one, so that's 4 years ago. But before that, I always was a huge fan. And this is an image by Moneta Sleet Jr., who is the first black man to win a Pulitzer for photography. He was the only black man invited to the funeral of Martin Luther King. So that is the wife, the widow, at her husband's funeral, Coretta Scott King, and her daughter Bernice, wondering where her father is. I'm showing you this image because it's the first time I saw a photograph that made me realize that the still image was much more than birthday parties and trivial memory shots. It could remind us of the work we need to do and help us understand the human condition. This is another shot. And what's amazing about this woman is that she is still alive today. She could be somebody's grandmother in here. And many of the people behind her are alive today. As you know, I'm an activist, and my weapon of choice is art. And I use images like this to have people like you sat in this room, and maybe you have a different lived experience to me. But my hope is that you have that thing called empathy in your heart, that to imagine other people's lived experience. So, after George Floyd got murdered, I looked at my wife and I said, I have run out of tears. My well is dry. And she's a very pragmatic Swedish lady, and she goes, well, pick up your camera. And I went, and I started shooting these extraordinary young and old souls that to me represent the very best of this United Kingdom. And I'm just going to run through some of these images I've actually minted this, and it's my only edition piece. And when I first shot this image, I was focused on those eyes, and I was really happy with the composition. And then at about 2 a.m., I'm in my editing suite, and I look at the image, and I realize that there's something else going on. There is a blurred out sign, and as you can see, the 2 words saying, "I am not a moment. Can you see us now?" make the composition. I sometimes believe that every photograph you take defines you. And as I was standing there shooting that man, the rest of the composition was trying to have me listen. And I'm so glad that I held my lens in that position, because this is one of the most important images I believe I've ever taken. So this is in Hyde Park. This is the image that has now become, I think, the most shared civil rights image of the digital age. And Darcy, the young woman in that picture, has become a dear friend of mine. And the thing about life is that she had an argument with her parents about going down to the protest and almost didn't go. She wrote the sign on the way there. You can still see the paint drying. And one missed tube stop, and we would never have met each other. And now, really the rest is history. This is the image that the son of Martin Luther King III, posted. So let me just repeat that. The very image that made me love photography, I didn't know then as a little boy that the son of the great man and the great woman in that image would be talking about the state of race in America using something that I took in the summer of 2020. This is the image that broke me, I still struggle looking at it today. It broke me because when you're out there, as a person of color, I was shooting my own trauma. But this image made me realize what it means to be a good human being. This young man in his wheelchair, with his mother's also in tears, with all the hardships he must have in his life, he came out in the middle of COVID, in the middle of lockdown. He came out to let people that look like me know that love is in the room. And then you can see the fists of hands of all different colors standing in solidarity. A picture is much more than the pixels and the light and the shadows. And I feel it's my responsibility to be that custodian of truth. The gay and trans community are a community that I'm doing everything I can with my lens to make sure they are seen, because even within a marginalized community, there is more marginalization, and it's something that I certainly won't stand for. And I have many, many projects that haven't been fully released yet that tell the stories of some of the most inspirational human beings I've ever seen. And I call this image the family. And this is, you can see the Houses of Parliament in the background. So, all of this led to me being called up by Vogue and shooting the September issue of September 2020, making me the first black man ever, 104 years, to take any cover photo for British Vogue. Now, I'm giving you all of that background because it leads me to Web3. Why do I love NFTs? Why do I love Web3? The truth is, so much great art comes from trauma, comes from not being seen, comes from the idea that you do not have a voice. I have been waiting for this technology my whole life. I first bought a JPEG in 2013 for 15 quid, a Damien Hirst work from a company called Sedition. And I remember being laughed out of every room I went into in 2013 because I valued something that was digital. But that wasn't the first time I valued anything digital. Zelda Ocarina of Time is still arguably the greatest sensory experience I've ever had. Honestly. I mean, it's perfection. And I value every moment of that. So for me, it wasn't whether I was going to do this and become someone that is a collector, a creator, but it was waiting for this technology. And there are two major points I wanted to make about the space that we're in now. Yes, it's embryonic, and everyone loves to say it's early, but it ain't that early. And I think we need to start being responsible. I have no doubt that smart contract technology can change the world, but it is left to human beings, many that are in this room, of how we wield this incredibly powerful technology. The idea that there are great artists and poets and dancers and musicians that are not as lucky as us, sitting in Charterhouse Street looking at wonderful art. All of us here have won what I would call the lottery of birth. What this technology can do for those that haven't is the revolutionary act. Everything from philanthropy, disaster response, education, insurance, and yes, art. But within art, what I would ask you to do is a term that I use a lot, which is as you climb, you must lift others. And that means the builders in this space, as well as the collectors and artists. The liquidity that's going to keep coming into this space mustn't only be shared by people that have the same story as you. Women must be seen more. People of color must be seen more. And those that are neurodiverse, and many, as I'm learning, people in this space are. I cannot spell. I failed every exam I ever took. I dropped out of university. In fact, for a big part of my adult life, I was ashamed of my mind. Up until the point I fell in love with a woman who fell in love with my mind. And she let me know that the very thing that I was ashamed of is what sets me apart. And I really wanted to share that because there are many people in this room that probably think they're a little bit different from the status quo. And I want you to lean into whatever makes you different, because it is that point of view that adds so much perspective to the soup of life. This is the first time since the Second World War where all of us have been through collective trauma. All of us. You can buy your way out of COVID. And the only thing I know that Homo sapiens do, that you cannot defend yourself against, is art. I have been in prisons, and I have shown pictures and paintings and played songs to tough old boys who never had a chance in the first place. And do you know what it's like to play Joni Mitchell or Nina Simone to someone that's never heard anything like that in their life? And watch their souls leak. And I ask them, why did that move you so much if you've never heard it before? And many of them say a variation of the same thing. It makes them feel that they are seen. They cannot be tough when it's art. The trauma that's handed down through generations can be broken by the work that all of you are doing. The stakes are much higher than floor prices and saying GM to everyone. I'm serious. This space we're in now can not just change lives, it can save lives. As chairman of the largest multi-art center in Europe, possibly the world, I oversee 18 acres of cultural space at the South Bank Center. I understand what it means to allow people to have art in their lives. There are many kids that I look after that if I bust them into the Victoria Albert or the Royal Albert Hall, they make themselves small. The grandeur of those places makes them feel they don't belong. but they come onto South Bank and to our skate park and run around the Haywood as if it's their own house, and they understand the possibility of life. That's what art gives you. I feel I'm rambling. I don't know how much time I have. But I think I'll close by saying, and I close in the last talk I did at Unit with the same thing. You know, as the world is burning, and I mean this with all my heart, as the world is burning, we cannot pass each other by like ships in the night. We cannot. And that Rumi quote that represents who I'm trying to be as a human being says, raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Got time for a question? Do you want a question or? Yeah?
I didn't know if you were picking me off.
No, we've got a couple more minutes. Anyone's got a lump in their throat or something in their eye right now?
I was absolutely amazed by what you spoke about on the NFT side and how it's moved you overall, and it's passionately coming across. What I would like to ask is, as you're the commander-in-chief of 15 acres of cultural landscape and a heartbeat for the country, would you host this event completely free if we can get enough corporates involved? Because this place, this artwork, what you're seeing, what the figure of the team for the last 3 days has been absolutely astonishing. Would you entertain them and make provisions to help them get the platform that they need in the heart of the country?
Thanks. And it leads me to actually saying something that I really should have, and I actually apologize. It's I have to do a special shout out to my friend and a leader in this space, and that's Miko. We were at a dinner the other day, and we were talking about how it's hard not to be forced to be someone you're not in this space because of the powers of the economics of it. And she has stayed, I've known her for a little while now, she has stayed steadfast in building this space right. And, we've already been in 2 meetings in the Haywood, and there are discussions ongoing with South Bank is the answer to that. And certainly, I'm sure something spectacular helmed by her and supported by good stakeholders like the Tezos Foundation and beyond will happen in the not too distant future. So I'm not worried about that. As long as Miko's there, I think we're going to do something very, very special. But on her journey in a space where very, very few people look like her, both on Twitter Spaces and in the real realm, to do what she's done for this space is something that I'm utterly in awe of. And I hope more follow with her tutorship or just being inspired by someone like that.
Cool, thank you very much.
I can do 2 more questions, 3 more, 2 more, whatever.
If there's any more questions, we can take a couple more, and then not seeing any. No.
Don't be shy. No more questions. Oh, hello.
I work in publishing, and to me it was ridiculous to hear that you were the first photographer to take a cover photo for Vogue. What is it going to take for that to not be the statistic anymore? Because there's plenty of beautiful photos, plenty of talented photographers, and I just don't understand why their work is not being shown.
I'll be real with you. It's leadership. I was commissioned by Edward Enningful, who is a black queer man that's in his 3rd year running Vogue, and he has a different lived experience to the former editor who was there for 28 years. For those 20, maybe even longer, but for a long time, for whatever period she was there, I can tell you that there are people that look like me that own cameras. You know, it's about where you look and how you want to lift others. So in all aspects of what we're doing, I think we need to make sure that we are hiring and empowering from the top people that all have a broader point of view, especially in this space right now. You know, there needs to be people that you don't always hear in Twitter Spaces being given an opportunity. There needs to be a genuine need for collectors. So some of the biggest collectors on Ethereum and Tezos have come to me saying, you know, we don't know where to find Indian or Turkish or South American or African artists. And I'm like, well, I do. And I try and lead them down that road. So it's about having people in the room that have the ability to make the decision to force change. Hello.
I have to keep this one quick, but hi, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very inspiring. You mentioned something about people making the smart contracts in a particular way. And there's our responsibility to make sure that this is that way. But in the world where everything is underpinned by money, you know, the whole incentive schemes around money, that's what you just mentioned. Hiring, which means that you need to get money involved in the process of hiring such people with lived experience and so on. Then how do you think that the change of money, which we're undergoing through digital currencies and the whole space, will change the incentive schemes and change the whole way how we behave? Because at the moment, even, you know, the whole dynamic between the collectors and everything is around money. Everything is run by speculation. And obviously, this is a completely different scheme compared to the scheme if we work with another way of sustaining ourselves. And what do you think about the change of money, which, you know, how that might affect, what do you think about how that might affect the whole dynamics of collection art and everything in between? Thank you.
Well, you know, again, if you look at this bear market that we're in, right, it's been brutal for everyone, but I think it's hurt a little bit more on Ethereum than it has on the Tez ecosystem. I think that's because PFP culture, and I am a degen as much as anyone, but PFP culture had infiltrated the culture of Ethereum to a point where the rampant wild prospecting and copycat nature of projects that were 200 a day was unsustainable. And that was purely linked to not just money, but greed, right? And I think the culture that we're seeing in the Tez ecosystem, yes, there is some flipping and some prospecting, but there's a genuine support from collectors, artists, and builders in a sustainable ecosystem. You know, when I pitched the Tezos Foundation to say, we need to have a broader point of view and help artists that are brilliant and or on scene, they didn't flinch. I had this conversation with just about everyone. I have access to everyone in the industry. They weren't the first people I spoke to, but they were the first people that had a genuine reaction, and they let their liquidity do the talking. And, you know, I will collect with this £1 million for the rest of the year, and hopefully that will be the blueprint of what this moment was, right? I feel that if I do it, it will hopefully showcase the rabbit holes that I've been down and finding people in Nicaragua, in Gabon. You know, there's Blessing Atas, who is a Nigerian woman based in Abuja. And when I first met her, she was taking pictures with an iPhone 4 or 5. True story. I didn't believe that they were even taken on a phone, and I can take a picture. I then sent this to Apple, and they didn't believe it. the creators of the phone. And once we confirmed everything, Apple quickly sent her all the toys that she needed. But she didn't have access to all the fancy curators and galleries and museums that we can just stroll into. But she's as talented as anyone I've ever seen in my life. So the commerce of it is one thing, but I think we need to separate greed, and we'll have a more sustainable ecosystem. And also we need to have the Ethereum Foundation, who have a lot of money, OpenSea, who have volume going through the roof, to have pools of liquidity, just like Tezos have, that can support creatives, not just help you mint, but actually support you long term. And I think the ecosystem will become healthier. And one more thing, and I think brands are going to change what they're doing. So initially, brands were just doing 5K, 10K PFP drops because they were lazy and they were being advised really badly. And I'm advising a lot of brands at the moment, and it's a much longer term view. So it's as important for brands to understand what not to do than just what they should do now or make a couple of million quid in 5 minutes. So I think that's going to change as well. Thank you.